Cool. So, hi everyone. We're doing something a little bit different today, and for the last few weeks we've done a live audio broadcast on Twitter Spaces and/or Clubhouse, depending on which service we have the most luck with on any given day. But today we're trying something out. It's very much an experiment, and we're just going to record a little Zoom call between Beth and myself, and we're going to be talking about a blog post we put live today, which is titled, "Why is there no Shopify for SaaS?" So that's the post. We can get into it and dissect some of the things behind it. Beth, do you want to say hi?
Hi. Feels so weird with it not being. I feel like we were just getting used to doing audio only, and now I'm trying to get used to doing video too.
The next level, a whole other dimension.
Next time, coming to you in 3D.
Yeah, IMAX quality. Yeah. So the post we put out, why is there no Shopify for SaaS? For those of you who maybe aren't familiar, at Go Squared, we are a SaaS company, and we're building a platform that helps a lot of SaaS companies with their growth. We have a suite of tools like analytics, live chat, messaging, communication, and customer data that makes growing a SaaS business much easier. And we've been focusing a lot more on our SaaS customers, but one of the questions we've been asking more and more is like, it doesn't seem like the journey from being an individual who's built some software to running a successful SaaS business is very smooth, and it seems like there's a lot of challenges and hurdles along the way. And when you compare the world of like building a SaaS business to another world of building an e-commerce business, there's quite a few significant players, Shopify probably being the canonical one, that have made it much easier to go from making some candles in your living room to selling candles online and building a candle business. And for someone who's building a software project in their living room, getting that thing to becoming a software business, it still feels very challenging. And so that was kind of the story behind, right? Well, that's why we're writing this article. But also, like, in the same week, there's also been quite a lot of chat on things like Twitter and on indie hackers about the same kind of topic. Why is there no Shopify for SaaS? And yeah, that's how we dissected it. And yeah, that's sort of what we've been chatting through, right, Beth?
One of the things I think is really interesting about this is the perception of the difficulty around building a SaaS business. As someone who I'm not an engineer, I'm not a developer. Building a SaaS business on the surface, to me, I go, oh my God, surely not. That must be so difficult. You must need hundreds of people. But actually, a lot of the SaaS founders that I speak to are very similar to kind of small business e-commerce owners, in the sense that they are individual people working on a project that, you know, arguably is more manageable to run than an e-commerce store. You're not having to deal with any sort of shipping or stock or storage, or I mean, I know you can get returns, but you're not having to physically post stuff and move things around. You don't have to make a candle and find a supplier, or God forbid you're in the food space and you have to deal with all of those kind of regulations. So when you break it down, starting a SaaS business should be easier than starting an e-commerce business, but I still don't think that people feel that way. And maybe that will change with more things going online, and the world that we're in it now being so digital and everyone working from home, and with the development of all these kind of no-code tools, which make it way easier for someone like me who can't code to kind of get involved. And I think that Shopify have done a really really good job of making it feel like starting an e-commerce business is really easy. And I think that's one of the reasons why they've been so successful in this space.
Totally. Yeah, I think I guess one of the things I wanted to draw attention to actually was one of the things that motivated us to sort of write about this today was the post and some comments on Twitter from, I was just making sure I get his name right, Jacob Grenfeld, and he had spoken to a chap called Travis Fisher, who had actually been trying to build a Shopify for SaaS called, of all things, what would you believe it would be called? SaaSify. And I thought it was very interesting to see that discussion and some of the sort of commentary around that. And it seemed that that essentially there are quite a few people that have sort of tackled some of these challenges from different angles. In London alone, we've got companies like Paddle, who are very much a fantastic platform to make accepting payments much easier. But then you've got tools like SaaSify, which is still running, I believe, but struggle to make the business model work, maybe, or make it work for the specific focus they had. There's also other tools, like much more developer focused tools for like getting the kind of the scaffolding around building a SaaS application off the ground. And then like you got companies like us, like Go Squared, like sort of coming at it more from the growth side and helping you with like how do you actually build that customer base and that user base. And so yeah, it's just really interesting to see that, like, I guess Shopify is so many things to e-commerce businesses that, like, a lot of people have a different view of what Shopify means to them, and then if you translate that onto the world of SaaS, where the challenges are also different to e-commerce, like you're not trying to figure out the right shipping label to put on packages, or you're not trying to figure out necessarily how to make the most of Christmas and selling things through Christmas. You're trying to find things like product market fit and the right pricing model, and retaining customers, and also figuring out your tech stack and things like that. And so I guess there's an easy assumption to make that, like, a Shopify for SaaS is XYZ, but Shopify for SaaS is actually a different thing to a lot of different people. But I think from our perspective, that Shopify for SaaS is ultimately just making it easier for people for individuals to get off the ground and start actually growing revenue from a piece of software. And I think for the individual as well, making sure that they can earn a living without necessarily having to be at their computer 24/7. Like the beautiful opportunity of the SaaS business model is that customers pay you every month for a product you've built, rather than customers paying you every month for time with you. So yeah, it's just an interesting, there's a lot of nuance to the whole discussion, I think, that maybe I underestimated.
And I wonder whether that's why there isn't yet a Shopify for SaaS, in that kind of really simple way, that because that could be building helping you build the actual SaaS product. It could be a set of developer tools, or a set of no code, how to build a SaaS product without any code toolkit. Or it could be all of the infrastructure around taking recurring payments and or hosting, or like we do, kind of growth and marketing toolkits. And Shopify does so many things, but they're also massive. I think it's really important that we remember the size of that business. The reason they are able to do so many things is because they have a huge number of people, they have a huge amount of money, and they can do these things. Whereas I think the really interesting challenge is if someone's building a Shopify for SaaS, Which is going to start to be a bit of a tongue twister if we keep saying it, is where do you start? Because, what did Shopify start with? Was the first thing a website? And sometimes when I talk to customers or I talk to people on indie hackers and I'm like, what are you looking for? What are the first tools you want when you're starting your SaaS business? You get a real mix of answers from, well, I need all of this complicated tech stuff. And I'm just like, yes, sure. Or they're going, well, I need MailChimp, or I need, analytics, or they're thinking more growth and marketing. And I wonder whether that's another part of it, is that the language that we use around business development and growth and marketing is much more normal everyday language, whereas the language we use around SaaS and tech and development is quite a barrier to entry, and maybe that's why it still hasn't been cracked yet. A combination of people aren't really sure what they need and what they want, and also it's just a massive problem to solve, to be able to do all of those things at once.
Yeah, it's perfectly feasible that there will never be a Shopify for SaaS, because it's just such an like impossible to define like thing. Like in the yeah, I was just trying to, off the top of my head, think of an analogy there, but I can't. But it's like you probably, like, because the problem space is actually quite substantially different. Like, there will be many companies that tackle parts of the Shopify value proposition in many different ways, and I think you can already see that kind of playing out in the fact no one is doing end to end. It's like I think it's fair to say that it's easy to be skeptical that one company could provide that level of end-to-end solution that for SaaS that can be done for Shopify. And partly that is because SaaS is just
huge.
It's huge, and it is not e-commerce. It is not as definable.
And also, I think there's something here in that when we're talking about e-commerce in the Shopify sense, yes, they have some huge brands using their platform, but we're mainly talking about physical product that you buy on a website and an individual, a consumer, buys from a brand. Right? We're not talking about wholesale. We're not talking about trade selling. We're not talking about B2B. Whereas when we talk about SaaS is still pretty broad as an industry. We're including like direct to consumer mobile apps that track your fitness, but we're also talking about a little tiny piece of software that makes a production supply chain run more efficiently. They're both SaaS, but they are massively different in the way that you talk to your customers, you sell, the sales process, the cost, the upkeep, the way you build it. Growing and building a B2B a part of a supply chain is hugely different to building a consumer facing game, and
such a good
arguably
point.
you could consider both of them as SaaS if they fit the recurring kind of service purchasing model. And maybe there's a bigger conversation here that we will never finish, but in this conversation about how are people defining SaaS, and is the answer not Shopify for SaaS, but Shopify for B2B SaaS, Shopify for B2C SaaS, or are there even closer niches within that are then easier to build a product for? And this is kind of marketing 101, right? Like, if we don't know who we're selling to, then we're never going to be able to solve their problem. It's never going to be specific enough. And I think that a lot of SaaS founders really get that. One of the things I really like seeing is these kind of compulsive SaaS builders who, they're building a different product every 4 months, and their product, maybe they only sell it for 90p a month, but it does one really specific thing, and there are 2,000 people who are willing to pay for that, but that's enough. And if you build a bunch of those, it adds up. And that's an incredibly different business model to somebody who is working in a team of 15 engineers to fix a supply chain software issue, right? And maybe that's where it's going wrong.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And and I think one of the this is quite a meta point, I guess, but one of the reasons why I think there is actually such an explosion in the number of SaaS products, services, businesses that exist is because with so much of the world being online, and the whole phrase like software is eating the world, that in the past, like maybe a problem felt like it was solved, but then someone's gone and niched down to solve a more specific part of that problem for a more specific set of people. And I feel like over time, yes, there are some like broad like players that do things very broadly, but I think because the cost of building new software is going down and down and down, the number of software providers is dramatically increasing, and so you're getting more and more niche SaaS companies. And so like, it's like we sell software to monitor your oil rig production, and we happen to have made it for Scottish based oil rigs because they have a specific need. Whereas like, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the proposition would have been, do you like, would a SaaS business even be appropriate for that? And like, maybe there's one company that does anything to do with oil rigs, or maybe I don't know, going off on a tangent there of hypotheticals, but like just niche.
Are you starting an oil rig company?
I know almost nothing about oil or oil rigs. I'm sure they need some software.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And also in terms of, I don't think that we've seen anywhere near the end of it, right? Like the more that we live online, the more on digital products are going to dominate our purchasing. And again, the more niche they'll have to get, right? Like everybody wears clothes. You can buy hundreds and hundreds and thousands of different types of clothes. If you want an app that tracks your health, you're kind of limited to like a decent handful, but like a handful of ones that will actually work and serve what you want. And I think there's so many opportunities still to be taken advantage of in this space. And in all places, businesses are becoming more digital, our own lives are becoming more digital. And I also think that this is kind of coinciding with another trend of, when the internet first came out, people were willing to pay a lot of money for the stuff on the internet because it was new and exciting and cool. And then we went through this kind of ad-based, actually the consumer is the product phase, where most individuals weren't willing to buy things that were digital products because they're like, well, it should be free. It's on the internet, it's free. And now I think we're slowly coming back around to, no, I will spend money on a non-physical product. I mean, look at NFTs. Like, we're kind of getting there, the extreme, right, of people spending that kind of money on digital tokens. But even in an app basis, or in a something I want to add to my an app on my laptop or an app on my phone, or an add-on, people are getting more willing to pay for things because we have a better understanding of digital products and how they impact our lives. And that's only going to increase as like wearables get more common, and also because of trust. As we start inviting these things, I wear a smartwatch. It knows everything about me all the time, every day. I don't want that data being, I mean, it probably is being harvested, but I would pay money to get something I trust in that kind of an instance, rather than go, yeah, go on, I'll have the dodgy free one that probably is do whatever they're doing with my DNA. And so I think that will change, and that will just provide more and more opportunities. And on the same time as the tools for building, I mean, look at now, like how you can build a website, right? 10 years ago, you essentially needed a degree in computer science to be able to build a website, whereas now most people can drag and drop and be set up in a couple of minutes. And maybe that will happen with SaaS products. And if it does, then the real challenge, and the challenge I think a lot of our customers have, is, well, I know how to build it. I'm already technical. I already know what I'm doing. But how do I get people to buy it? How do I grow it? Because you can't just keep making projects forever that don't make any money, especially not if you want that to be your career. And that's when we get into that interesting challenge of, it's not that the people who don't have the technical skills, they will be able to get into the SaaS business because they've got no code. But who's helping the people with the technical skills learn the marketing, the growth, the sales, that side of it? I think that will end up being more of an audience than the marketers wanting no code tools. Maybe that's my prediction.
Yeah, no, it's truly exciting times. And yeah, I think, yeah, with more, as there are more and more, as the cost of starting a SaaS business continues to decrease, like obviously there are more and more coming into existence, but like, as we all know, it's one thing to start a business of any kind, and it's another one to grow it into something that can,
and to sustain it and keep it going, right? Because that's the key part of SaaS. It's a recurring thing. It has to come back every month, and that's a really unique challenge to this kind of a model. And you're not, yes, repeat custom is good in all businesses, but if I'm buying a pair of shoes, I'm probably not buying them every month, not even every 6 months, right? If you are going to come back to that e-commerce customer as an e-commerce customer, there's quite a long kind of period in between. Whereas for SaaS, the big challenge is you've got to convince that person month by month to stick with you, and that's hard. It's a lot of work, and anything that toolkits can do to make that a little bit easier, I think will enable SaaS founders not to just do the work that keeps the lights on of what they've already got, but to be able to grow and develop and do more. So automation is going to be a huge part of all of this, I think.
Totally. Beth, I know we had our hard stop at 6, and it is 6 now. So I feel like it's a good place to wrap. And yeah, will we see a Shopify for SaaS? Is Shopify SaaS even a thing? Who knows? But we'll continue to ask these big questions. Thank you for a nice 10, 15, 20-minute chat on video for once. And yeah, any parting thoughts or anything?
None that won't lead us down another rabbit hole. So I'll keep quiet.
Right, cool. Well, thanks, Beth. Great
Thank you.
chatting.
Thanks. See you later.